have lived alone for years. I know every sound this building makes, and I know the difference between a house settling and something that isn't. The one thing I never accounted for was the one night someone kicked my bedroom door in being the same night I physically could not make a sound. Let me back up. My name is Rachel. I was on the 3rd floor of my apartment building, and I had been dealing with laryngitis for 3 days. Couldn't speak above a whisper, could barely get a full sentence out. It was well past midnight, and I was half asleep when the alarm went off. Not a sound you register gradually, a sound that hits you before you have decided to be awake. I sat up, heart going before my brain had caught up. First thought, malfunction, sensors fail, seals degrade, alarms go off at 12:47 on a Wednesday for no reason all the time. Most common explanation by an enormous margin. I reached for my phone, then footsteps inside the apartment. Not in the building hallway. Inside, on the other side of my bedroom door. Moving fast. The weight and rhythm of someone running, coming from the front of the apartment toward the back. Toward me. Phone in hand. Dialing 911. The door came in. One impact, full force. The door swung open and hit the wall, and he was standing in the frame. Panicked. The alarm had been running long enough that he knew he had run out of time, and his body had made a decision, and the decision was to kick through whatever was between him and out. He saw me sitting upright, phone to my ear, looking directly at him. I opened my mouth, my lungs pushed, my throat tried. The sound of nothing came out. Not a whisper, not even the shape of a sound. Just a dry, burning scrape where a scream should have been. Air moving through a throat that had nothing left to give. Producing dead silence when everything in my body was trying to produce the opposite. 3 days of laryngitis. And this was the moment it chose to matter. I felt the silence leave my body. I kept the phone pressed to my ear. The dispatcher was asking what my emergency was, and I could not answer her. He grabbed my laptop from the desk. Grabbed my purse from the hook beside the door. The purse was empty. Wallet on the kitchen counter where I had left it earlier. He did not know that. He ran. Bathroom. Door locked. Floor. Back against the bathtub. I put the phone to my ear and whisper screamed to the dispatcher. That is the only phrase I have for it. The sound of someone whose voice is gone trying to produce volume. Forced and strained, more air than sound, arriving as something barely above nothing. I told her what had happened in that register. Her voice was the only normal thing left in the apartment. Steady, functional, calm in the specific way of someone trained to be the clearest sound in a room where everything else has gone wrong. She asked questions. I answered in whispers. Told me officers were on the way. Told me to stay where I was. I watched the clock on my phone from the bathroom floor. 6 minutes. When she told me they were outside my door, I told her I was not opening anything until I had confirmation. She stayed on the line while I walked through the apartment past the broken door and asked through the front door for badge numbers. 2 officers gave them. I repeated them to the dispatcher. She confirmed. I opened the door. They found the laptop 3 buildings away. He had dropped it running. The purse was in the stairwell. He had come through a kitchen window I had not fully latched, tripped the alarm, and panicked away from the panel near the front door. Away from the front meant toward the back, toward my bedroom. He had not known I was home. Sick days move differently, in and out at unusual hours, which from the outside probably looked like an empty unit. He chose what he thought was an unoccupied apartment. He was wrong by one closed bedroom door. I have thought about the laryngitis more times than I can count, not with self-pity, with the specific weight of coincidence that has nowhere to go. 3 days without a voice, and the night someone kicked my door in was night 3. Any other night that week I would have screamed. Immediate, full, involuntary, the complete output of a body that has just had its door come off its frame at 12:47 in the morning. He would have heard it in the first half second. He might have run without grabbing anything. The dispatcher would have heard it before I said a single word. Everything that followed hinged on a sound I could not make. He did not know I was home. He did not know I was in that bedroom. He did not know I was sitting upright with a phone in my hand. The only thing he saw when that door came in was a person who opened her mouth and made no sound. And that silence is the only reason he grabbed what he grabbed instead of doing something else entirely. That one I can explain. Every decision, every second. The next one has no clean explanation, because the thing that makes it impossible to put down is not what happened. It is the math of what she found in the morning, the math of how long he had been standing there before she opened her eyes. I woke up at midnight and there was a shirtless man standing in my bedroom, smoking a cigarette and staring at me. When I yelled, he jumped back out the window. In the morning, I found the screen sitting against the outside of the house. I've never slept with a window more than cracked since. Let me explain the setup. I was in my early 20s, living alone in a ground floor apartment. It was a warm night and I had left a window open. Not wide open, just open enough to let the air in. The screen was in. I lived in what I considered a reasonably safe neighborhood, and I hadn't thought twice about it. I had done it before, without incident. People leave windows open in the summer. It's a normal thing to do. I want to be clear about something. I am a light sleeper, always have been. I wake up at sounds that other people sleep through. A door closing somewhere in the building, a car alarm down the street, the refrigerator cycling. My body is tuned to be alert when I'm asleep. That matters for what I'm about to tell you. I woke up at midnight. I have no idea what woke me. No sound I can identify. No specific thing. I just came awake the way you sometimes do in the dark when something has changed in your environment before your brain has identified what it is. I turned over. He was standing in the middle of my bedroom, shirtless, maybe mid-40s, smoking a cigarette. I could see the ember at the end of it in the dark, the small orange glow moving slightly as he breathed. He was not moving otherwise, not rummaging through drawers, not looking at my things, just standing there in the middle of my room in the dark, facing my bed and looking at me. I do not know how long he had been there before I woke up. I yelled. The sound came out of me before I had consciously decided to make it. Just a raw noise, loud and sudden, the kind your body produces when it acts before your brain catches up. And the effect was immediate. He was as startled as I was. Whatever he had expected from that room, it was not for me to wake up and scream. He stumbled backward toward the window, and I watched him go back through it, not falling, not panicking, but moving fast. And then he was gone, and the window was just a rectangle of dark sky. I didn't move for a while. I sat in bed in the dark and listened to my own breathing and tried to track any sound from outside the window. Nothing. No footsteps on the ground below. No rustling. No voice. Eventually I got up, slowly staying back from the window, and slammed it shut and locked it. Then I pushed the bookcase from against the wall and wedged it in front of the window, sat down on the floor with my back against the bed, and waited. I waited for it to be light. That was the only goal. Just get to daylight. In the morning, I went outside and walked around to where the window was. The screen was sitting against the side of the house, leaning neatly against the wall below the window, as if it had been placed there deliberately, not pushed out, not knocked loose, placed, removed carefully and set aside so the window could be opened without damaging anything. The kind of thing you do when you want to be quiet. I reported it. The police took a report. Nothing came of it. I moved to an upper floor apartment after that. I will not live on a ground floor. I have not slept with a window more than cracked open since that night, regardless of how hot it is, regardless of how safe the neighborhood is supposed to be. The thing I come back to most is not the moment he jumped out the window. It's the moment before that. The moment I turned over and he was just standing there, not moving, not doing anything, just standing in the dark in the middle of my room with a cigarette, and understood that he had been there for a while before I woke up. He had come in quietly enough that I hadn't heard him. He had removed the screen without waking me. He had been standing in that room in the dark, watching me sleep long enough to finish most of a cigarette. I think about that cigarette a lot, about where it was when he climbed through the window, about how long a cigarette burns, about how long that gives you, and about how many times it happened before the night I finally woke up. Both of those stories are about someone who got in and was seen. This last one is about someone who was never seen at all. Someone who sat in the dark outside a house for months, patient enough to wait, until the night he found a house where there was nobody to call out. Two years after the police told me the case was going nowhere, they knocked on my door again. They looked different this time. They asked if they could look at the garden. Then they told me what they had found. I was 17 years old. My parents were away overnight and I was home alone. Not unusual. I had stayed by myself before and it had never been a problem. I went about my evening normally, ate dinner, watched TV, stayed up a bit later than I usually would because I could. It was well past midnight when I turned the downstairs lights off and went to use the bathroom before bed. While I was in there, I heard footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps in the room directly next to the bathroom. I froze. I called out. Not bravely, just reflexively. The way you do when you half hope it's someone you know and half know it isn't. I said my dad's name. No response. Then I heard what sounded like glass breaking, or not breaking, more like the specific sharp sound of glass being struck, the kind of sound that doesn't quite resolve into something identifiable. I waited. Then I looked around the downstairs. Nothing visible, no broken glass, nothing out of place. I went to bed telling myself I had imagined it. When I woke up the next morning, the downstairs window was open. Not ajar. Open. Fully open. The kind of open that requires someone to push it up deliberately. It had been snowing the night before. That window could not have been left open by accident. I called my mom in tears. She called the police. They arrived quickly. 2 officers who were immediately attentive in a way I noticed. They looked at the window carefully. They walked around the outside of the house. They found something in the garden. Behind a large shrub near the side of the house, they found a hollow. Scraped out from inside the bush, branches pushed back and compressed to create a space big enough for a person to crouch or sit in. Inside that hollow, cigarette butts, a significant number of them, and beer cans. Someone had been sitting in that bush for a long time, not once. The quantity of cigarette butts suggested multiple visits, multiple nights, hours spent crouched in the dark in a hollowed-out bush watching the side of my house. The officers told me they knew who it likely was. A man with a history of this. Known peeping Tom in the area. Someone they had been watching because his behavior appeared to be escalating. Incidents they suspected him in. A pattern they were concerned about. Because I hadn't seen him and he could plausibly explain away his prints on the window, they told me the case was unlikely to go anywhere. They were apologetic about it. They left. I stayed in that house. I had to. It was my family's home and I was 17. I slept with the lights on for a while. I kept checking the garden from the upstairs windows before I went to bed. I did not tell most people what had happened because I didn't know how to explain a hollowed bush and a man the police knew about but couldn't charge. Life continued. I finished school. I went to university. I moved away and built a life somewhere else. I didn't forget what had happened. You don't forget a hollowed bush with cigarette butts in it and a police officer telling you about a man they couldn't charge. But it receded. It became one of those things that happened. One of those things you carry quietly, that you don't bring up because there is no satisfying end to the telling of it. 2 years after the original incident, the police knocked on my door. The same area. Their faces were different from the first visit, careful in a way that told me before they said anything that what they were about to say was serious. They asked if they could look around the garden again. I let them. They stood near the bush for a while. Then they came inside and sat down. They told me they had arrested the man. He had broken into a woman's home and raped and murdered her. He was now in prison. They sat with me for a while after that. I don't remember everything they said. I remember the specific quality of the silence in the room when they finished talking. I think about the cigarette butts a lot, about how many nights he was out there in that bush, watching the house, learning the windows, understanding when the lights went off. About the night he heard me call out and say my dad's name and decided to leave. About the woman who didn't have a name to call out. About the fact that his prints were on my window and the case went nowhere.